Discovered, how the eldest spinster, chosen by a desired Earl, experienced a life-changing love. Eleanor stood at the edge of the family farm, her hands calloused yet strong from years of labor. Fields of corn swayed like golden waves under the late afternoon sun, yet all she could feel was the weight of her solitude. At 28, the reins of her family's dreams rested heavily on her shoulders while her younger sisters danced into the arms of their suitors. Townsfolk whispered behind cupped hands, casting eyes laden with judgment upon Eleanor, their tone laced with pity. Spinster. Unlucky. A failure. If only they knew her heart was a labyrinth of love yet to be found. Deep down, Eleanor was proud of her dedication to the farm. It was not just crops but a legacy, a testament of grit. Still, she longed for companionship, for laughter shared over candlelit dinners, stories told beneath vast, star-filled nights. Acceptance of her solitary life settled in her chest like an old friend, until an unexpected arrival turned her world upside down. Aiden, an English earl with a smile that could light up the dreariest day, entered their small town like a whirlwind. He roamed the fields with an open heart, captivated not just by the sprawling landscape but by Eleanor's authenticity. Their encounters fluttered with unspoken chemistry, a lingering gaze, shared laughter, sparks igniting in the quiet spaces between words. The elusive magic of love wrapped around them like a warm embrace, yet with every flutter, the weight of judgment loomed closer. Eleanor discovered a new kind of joy in Aiden's presence, yet shadows of doubt clung to her heart. Titles and class divided them in a world that thrived on gossip and societal expectations. Aiden spoke of burdens he carried, of the coldness of title and obligation suffocating his spirit. As he confided in her, Eleanor felt an irresistible pull toward the man who understood the struggle of being trapped by identity and expectation. But the townspeople's whispers grew louder, insisting that love cannot flourish between the noble and a mere farmer's daughter. As they drifted closer, Eleanor's love for her family wrestled with a desire to step out of the shadows. Could she truly live between two worlds? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As fate would have it, one fateful evening during the annual harvest festival, a storm rolled in, fierce and unrelenting. The wind howled like a banshee, and Eleanor's heart raced as she realized the crops were at risk. We have to protect them, she shouted, her voice lost in the tempest. Aiden's eyes met hers with fierce determination, and together, they rallied the neighbors, their hands working with shared purpose against nature's wrath. In those frantic moments, Eleanor felt a surge of courage she had never known. As the rain drenched them, mixing with sweat and determination, Eleanor stood shoulder to shoulder with Aiden. Their hearts drummed a shared rhythm, eclipsing everything she once thought held value. The storm could not touch the fire igniting within her a warm glow, challenging her past beliefs about herself and her worthiness. Amidst the chaos, Eleanor became acutely aware of what she truly desired. A choice loomed on the horizon: did she remain bound by duty, or dare to tread the path of love? The thunder crashed above, yet clarity surged through her veins. As they fought side by side, Eleanor realized her journey was only just beginning, leaving her breathless and anxious to find out what awaited them next. What would become of her and Aiden as the storm raged on? Would she choose the path of the heart, breaking free from societal chains? The night remained full of unanswered questions, each crack of lightning sparking a change that lingered in the air. Eleanor stood drenched to the bone, the storm swirling around her like a living thing. The memory of Aiden's steady gaze, his presence beside her in the chaos, pushed her heart into overdrive. Together, they had gathered the townsfolk, forming an unlikely alliance to save the crops, to protect what it meant to her family. But as she met his eyes in that fleeting moment, something whispered deep within her, this wasn't just about the farm. This was about her life, her unyielding choice. The tempest raged on, but Eleanor's thoughts were louder than the crashing thunder. With every gust of wind that nearly swept them off their feet, she felt herself teetering on the edge of a precipice that she had spent years avoiding. Aiden had awakened something inside her, a longing she couldn't ignore any longer, the longing for a life that chose joy over obligation. Eleanor. Aiden called, his voice breaking through the roar of the storm. He pointed toward a section of the fence that was threatening to collapse under the wind's fury. Without hesitation, she sprinted alongside him, hands trembling as they fixed the loose boards. The physical exertion nearly drowned out the noise in her mind, replacing it with the sensation of teamwork and trust. As they worked, Aiden's shoulder brushed against hers, a simple touch yet electric in its charge. The world around them faded, it was just them, the storm, and the rising tide of emotions that dared to spill over. It was easy to forget the town's judgments in these moments. She was no longer just the spinster. In this stormy world, she was part of something real and vibrant. Finally, with a last shove, the fence held firm. Aiden let out a triumphant laugh, his eyes glowing like the warm rays of sun breaking through the clouds. But the sound that escaped Eleanor's lips was anything but triumphant. It was a mix of relief and something deeper, a resonance of the feelings blooming within the confines of her heart. How long had she buried her desires under layers of responsibility? "Are you all right?" Aiden asked, genuine concern etched on his features. She nodded, though her heart was thudding, not only from the exertion but from the realization that she had to confront her own fears. "Never better," she replied, her voice stronger than she felt. It was true, in a way she hadn't anticipated. Choosing to fight for something greater made her feel alive. But the doubt crept back, an unwelcome visitor. With the town's gossip echoing in her ears, the reality of their worlds colliding struck her anew. A farmer's daughter and an earl. Could there be a future for them? Or would the storm outside match the turbulence within her heart? As the rain began to soften and the winds died down, promising an end to the storm, a small voice whispered in her heart, "You have a choice." She could cling to the familiar path of duty or take a leap she had only dared to dream. Before she could reply with a resolve that matched the fierce intensity of the moment, a loud crack echoed above them. They looked up just in time to see a large branch break off a nearby tree, crashing down dangerously close to where they stood. "I'll catch it!" Aiden shouted, adrenaline coursing through his voice. But Eleanor felt the world shift as hers spiraled. Would she let this moment pass without challenging everything she thought she knew? Aiden's quick movements shifted Eleanor's instincts into overdrive, making her pulse race. She had to ask herself, was she the woman brave enough to choose love, despite the cost? Their eyes locked, and in that charged silence, the promise of a change hung heavy in the air. Just then, as uncertainty crackled around them, Aiden was swept up in the weight of the branch and risked everything. It was a defining moment. Would he remain steadfast, or would she let fear dictate their fate? "Eleanor." He called again, positioned just beneath the teetering branch, face strained with urgency and breathless expectation. In that heartbeat, the choices lay bare before her, save the crops or save her heart. How would she embrace the love she ached for, standing in the crosswinds of duty and desire? As the branch threatened to break free, the question lingered, could Eleanor choose a different life, one filled with love, or would fear hold her prisoner forever? Eleanor felt her heart race as she witnessed Aiden poised beneath the perilous branch. Her mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. Part of her screamed to flee, to save herself from the tumultuous feelings that threatened to engulf her. Another part, the braver part, rose up with fierce determination. This was it, her moment to choose. "Aiden!" she yelled, pushing forward, her voice raw against the whipping wind. "Get out of the way!" But he wouldn't budge. His gaze was locked onto hers, and she could see it in his eyes, an unyielding resolve masked by the fear of what was about to happen. Time felt suspended, caught in the chaos of the storm and the tumult of their hearts. The branch wobbled again, and she felt a collective breath taken by everyone around them. In that heartbeat of a moment, she made a choice. She charged forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Hold on!" she shouted as she stretched out her arms towards him. "A little closer!" he called out, strain evident in his voice as he braced himself against the weight above him. With one final burst of energy, she lunged, grasping for his hand. Her fingers wrapped around his just as the branch slipped, and with a crack like thunder, it fell. Aiden's grip tightened around her wrist as he pulled her back, dragging her to safety just in time. They stumbled back, the branch crashing down mere inches from where they stood. Breathless and shaking, Eleanor found herself high on a wave of adrenaline and relief. The world around her began to settle, raindrops falling like gentle whispers against the ground. Aiden's eyes were wide, his chest heaving as he looked down at her. "You're crazy!" he gasped, a mix of admiration and disbelief painting his expression. Maybe she half-laughed, feeling the weight of the moment settle between them. "Maybe you're brave," Aiden replied, his voice low and filled with a warmth that made Eleanor's heart flutter. The fear that had gripped her moments ago dissipated into the air, taking with it the heaviness of obligation. She had confronted the storm, both around her and within. This was what she wanted, someone who saw her for who she truly was, flaws and all. But just as her heart dared to leap, doubt reared its head again. She glanced back at the town, the weight of its eyes, its judgments, pressing in on her. What would they say if they knew? Aiden, still close enough for her to feel his warmth seep into her shivering skin, seemed to sense the shift. "Let them talk," he said, his tone steady. "You saved me. You chose to act." The rest. He paused, glancing back at the townsfolk, who had been watching with bated breath. "The rest can wait." Eleanor stared at him, her heart thundering against her ribs. Could she really let go? Let others think what they wanted and pursue this wild path of passion he offered? Just as she opened her mouth to respond, a scattered voice echoed from the crowd. "Eleanor." It was Ruth, an old friend, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "Are you okay?" "Yes, Eleanor began, but the words fell flat as she caught Aiden's gaze again. There it was, that connection, that magnetic pull toward a future she hadn't ever allowed herself to explore. The realization hit her, the town's whispers had been swampy chains holding her back, but here, in this moment, Aiden was an anchor. He offered her freedom. "Eleanor," Aiden said softly, breaking her reverie. "We can make our own choices, together. Just take my hand and trust me." "Trust you," she murmured, feeling the gravity of the decision before her. Could she surrender to something that felt so unpredictably right? As the crowd began to disperse, whispers crackling like the last of the storm, Eleanor stood at the crossroads of her heart, hands trembling, wrapped in the promise of a new future or the comfort of the familiar. "Will you choose this life, Eleanor?" The question hung in the mists of uncertainty, pregnant with hope and fear alike. And as she looked into Aiden's eyes, the decision loomed before her like the storm that had just passed. Would she take the leap? The world shifted around her as she made her choice, and in that moment, she realized what terrified her most was not the unknown, but the thought of letting this moment slip away. Tomorrow beckoned, but would Eleanor step into the light or retreat into her shadows? Eleanor took a deep breath, her heart racing as uncertainty swirled within her. Aiden's south hand hung temptingly close, an invitation to a path untraveled. The moment felt heavier than the rain-soaked ground beneath her feet. She glanced at Ruth, who was still staring wide-eyed, waiting for her answer, her expression a mix of worry and curiosity. Then her gaze shifted back to Aiden, whose eyes held a fervor that made her pulse race. "What would it mean to trust you?" she whispered, wrestling with the thought of what could be and what had always been. She envisioned a life unshackled from the monotony of small-town whispers. A life where she could stand beside Aiden, free, joyous, and unafraid to pursue her dreams. "You'd find out," Aiden replied, his voice soothing yet brimming with anticipation. "Life is too short to let fear decide for us. Let's create our own story. Just you and me. Eleanor's heart soared at the promise in those words. Yet apprehension pinned her down, a reminder of the town's unyielding scrutiny. What would her family think? Would her friends acknowledge her boldness, or would they label her reckless? The weight of expectation loomed large, but another, more powerful feeling rose up, urging her forward. I want to, she admitted, feeling the warmth of his hand reaching for hers, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. The pandemonium inside her heart quieted just for a moment, as the world outside fell away, merging her fears with a glimmer of hope. Then let us start now. Don't think about tomorrow, let us be here, right now. Aiden's voice pulled her back, grounding her. His grip tightened around her hand, and she could feel the strength coursing through him. The world felt suddenly alive, filled with color and possibility. The crowd faded into a distant hum, and with Aiden by her side, Eleanor took that trembling step into the unknown. She stepped forward, heart thundering, embracing the uncertainty like a long-lost friend. Together, they moved away from the watches of the townsfolk, away from the weight of judgment. He led her toward the edge of the park, where the trees parted to reveal a small meadow glistening with raindrops dancing on fresh blades of grass. It felt like a hidden realm, a sanctuary for their burgeoning connection. Aiden turned to her, and for the first time, his usual bravado shifted into a softer demeanor. This is where we can be ourselves, away from the noise. Eleanor smiled, the corners of her mouth lifting shyly. It is beautiful, she said, looking around. But her focus quickly returned to Aiden. But what if I'm not brave enough? What if I falter? The bravest thing you can do is to give yourself permission to be vulnerable, he answered gently. Every moment will give us the chance to learn and grow together. Falling is part of flying. His words hung in the misty air, a promise tethered to both hope and anxiety. Eleanor took a step closer, their shared warmth melting away the last vestiges of her doubt. The space between them shrank until she could feel the rhythm of his heart echoing with her own. But just as she felt the spark of possibility igniting, a sudden noise shattered the serenity, a shout from behind. Eleanor. Aiden. It was Ruth again, her voice frantic, cutting through the moment like a knife. They turned as one, adrenaline surging back through Eleanor's veins. Ruth rushed towards them, her expression a whirlwind of urgency and alarm. You both need to come back. There's a crisis in town. Eleanor's heart sank. The euphoria of the moment snapped tight, coiling back into the shadows she had fought so hard to escape. What has happened? Aiden asked, concern etching lines on his face. Something's gone wrong at the old mill. They need everyone there, Ruth breathlessly explained, glancing back towards the town with fear flashing in her eyes. Eleanor felt her pulse quickening. This was at the call to return to the life she was trying to break free from. Would she follow Aiden, or give in to her old commitments? The storm inside her raged once again, and as the three of them stood poised on the threshold between two worlds, Eleanor had to choose. Would she run back to the expectations or face the chaos with Aiden by her side? The answers loomed ahead, and Eleanor knew the choice would change everything. Eleanor's heart raced as she turned to Ruth, the weight of her indecision growing heavier. The meadow, once a realm of hope and possibility, now felt like quicksand pulling her back into the familiar, a familiar that felt more like a cage than a home. The urgency in Ruth's eyes ignited something primal within her. She was no longer just deciding for herself, her choice now held the power to ripple through her entire life, threading through the lives of those she cared about. Eleanor, we can't wait. Ruth's voice pierced through her inner tumult. They need your help. You know how dangerous it can get if we don't act fast. Aiden stepped closer, his presence grounding her. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, a reminder that she was not alone in this moment. We can manage this together. Whatever's going on, we can face it as one. The thought felt comforting yet terrifying. Eleanor pictured the wreckage at the old mill, and her heart started pounding anew. But could she face the judgment of the townspeople while wrapping her heart around new trust? She felt torn between the fire of adventure with Aiden and the call to duty that had always been a part of her. Are you really going to turn your back on them? Ruth pressed, eyes sparkling with concern. They need you. I don't want to lose you to whatever this is between you and Aiden. Don't let fear shout louder than your heart, Aiden murmured softly, making Eleanor glance toward him again. You'll have to decide for yourself. You can be brave in a crowd, or you can be brave in this moment, right here with me. Those words ignited something fierce within her. She was at a fork in the road, and Eleanor knew she couldn't ignore the flicker of courage sparking within. She glanced back at the town, where echoes of laughter, gossip, and doubt awaited her, followed closely by the strength in Aiden's unwavering gaze. Let us go, she said, a newfound determination in her voice. If there's a crisis, we need to help. Ruth's face brightened, relief washing over her features as she nodded vigorously. They turned as one towards the path leading back to town, and every step felt like stepping deeper into both duty and their unexpected partnership. Eleanor clenched Aiden's hand tighter, feeling the warmth that spread through her fingers. As they approached the milling crowd gathered near the old mill, a sense of urgency hung in the air, thick and tangible. The townsfolk moved like shadows, their expressions a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Eleanor's heart hammered as they neared the scene. She could see figures darting about, smoke curling upwards indicating frustration brewing. What is going on? Eleanor called out as they drew closer, eyes scanning the chaos. A frail voice broke through. The old mill's ventilation system is blocked. We're trying to get everyone out safely. It was Mrs. Thompson, her usual calm demeanor frayed at the edges. Eleanor could feel dread sinking into her stomach. The containment of an emergency would require organization, and she had been relied upon before. But would they trust her after everything? Would they see the courage she was trying to find within herself? What can I do to help? She asked, carving a determined path through the crowd, and Aiden followed closely, his support a steady backdrop to her flaring hope. Help coordinate us. Tell people to grab the buckets, Mrs. Thompson urged, her eyes wide with gratitude when she saw Eleanor actively engaging. Eleanor nodded, turning to rally the people around her. Clarity mixed with frustration surged within her, giving her a new purpose. Everybody, listen up. We need those buckets to transport water. Let us move fast. Aiden caught her eye, the spark between them igniting once more. Suddenly, she felt the town shift, the fear that had clouded her heart gave way to a fierce resolve. For a fleeting moment, she grasped the power of collective action. But as the chaos of the old mill swallowed their world, Eleanor felt something shift within her. Was she truly ready to face the entanglement of love and obligation? Would she stand firm as both the person they needed and someone who yearned to fly free? In that electrifying moment, she stopped, watching as Aiden disappeared into the fray. The true questions loomed large. What was at stake? And would her choice today unlock something deeper than either of them could be expected? Eleanor took a deep breath, knowing that no matter what happened next, the course of her life would never ever be the same. Eleanor sprinted into the chaos, her mind racing as fast as her heart. She felt adrenaline coursing through her veins, pushing her into the thick of it. People were everywhere, shouting orders, some panicking, while others clung to a thin thread of hope. In that moment, she became a part of something bigger than herself. She had a purpose. Grab those buckets. She yelled, her voice melding with the urgency around her. We need to form a line to the river. Fast. The crowd seemed to wake at her command. Hands began to move, the tension dissipating just a bit. Eleanor felt the weight of their aspirations resting on her shoulders, and it was exhilarating. With Aiden by her side, she could almost believe they could conquer it all. Here, take this. Aiden handed her a bucket, sweat glistening on his brow. His grin was infectious, despite the circumstances. You're a natural leader. I'm just trying to help, she said, her cheeks warming. The connection between them was undeniable, a thread unbroken by the chaos around them. As they worked, Eleanor felt eyes on her villagers in awe, some skeptical, but most genuinely thankful. She snatched another bucket, her hands steady despite the frantic atmosphere. Moments like these were humbling. She remembered those long nights under the stars with Ruth, dreaming of being someone who could make a difference. Now, it was happening. "Look out!" a voice cried as a beam creaked dangerously nearby. Instinctively, Eleanor ducked and shouted for everyone to back away. The crowd complied, shifting back like a tide, but their trust in her sparked a fire inside Eleanor. "Stick together," she encouraged, trying to bring order to the madness. "We need to keep focused. Everyone with a bucket, to the river." As the line formed, Eleanor found herself at the front. It was more than water they were transporting now, it was hope, unity. She could see Ruth out of the corner of her eye, her worry visibly peeling back as she moved to help, eyes flaring with belief. This was the Eleanor she'd always wanted to be, and it felt good. Just as they were making headway with the buckets, the mill's structure creaked ominously again. A hush fell over the crowd, and the world slowed. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Fear pierced her. "Get back!" Aiden yelled, stepping in front of her, eyes narrowed and focused. She felt her heart clench as she reached out, grabbing his arm. He turned to her, worry clouding his features. "Stay behind me, Eleanor. I can't lose you now," he said firmly, his gaze locking onto hers. That he cared so much spun something sweet and warm within her. In that instant, it became clear that this moment was transforming them both. She was no longer just Eleanor, the sister, the forgotten one. In this wild, frenzied atmosphere, she was becoming a part of the very fabric of her community, stepping into her own power. Yet the lingering question remained, would she allow herself to embrace this new person she was becoming, despite the shadows of obligation looming? The beams suddenly cracked louder, the massive wood splintering, and the townsfolk scattered in fear. But Eleanor stood firm, her heartbeat quickening more with anticipation than with dread. She locked eyes with Aiden, who mirrored her resolve. "Together?" he asked, determination etched in his features. "Together," Eleanor replied, a surge of confidence blooming inside her. With the old mill at risk of utter collapse and the stakes rising each second, she was prepared to face the tide alongside him. But even as they took their places at the front lines of chaos, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that their struggles were only the beginning. What if this moment held more than just the fate of the mill? What if it forged a connection that neither could anticipate? Eleanor inhaled sharply, adrenaline propelling her forward. Time felt suspended as she wondered, would they emerge from this together, or was there a deeper danger hidden just beyond the crumbling walls? Eleanor squeezed the bucket tightly, every fiber of her being humming with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The crowd swelled around her like a storm, faces bright with uncertainty and determination. Aiden's presence anchored her. Together, they were two sparks against the gathering darkness. The beam creaked again, and Eleanor's stomach turned, but she refused to let that fear consume her. "Ready!" she shouted, and the line surged toward the river. Water splashed into buckets, splattering across their hands and faces, soaking their clothes but washing away some of the panic. As she darted back toward the mill, adrenaline coursed through her. The villagers began to chant her name. "Eleanor! Eleanor!" They called out, their voices rising like a wave, filling the air with a strange sense of power. It sent ripples of warmth through her heart. This was her moment, a chance to stand tall when everything else felt on the verge of crumbling. Then it happened. A loud crack echoed above them. The beam snapped like a twig, sending splinters flying. Screams filled the air, the sound piercing her heart. But instinct took over. She grabbed Aiden's arm and pulled him to the ground just as debris rained down. They shielded each other, and Eleanor could hear Aiden's breath quicken beside her. "Are you okay?" she whispered, fear etched on her face. "I am," he said, his eyes darting around. But we need to move. More people will get hurt if we stay here. Without hesitating, Eleanor nodded. Follow me. They crawled away from the debris, urgency propelling them forward. The cries and the chants still echoed around them, but they seemed distant now, a reminder of the fragile thread connecting everyone in that moment. Once out from under the collapsed beam's shadow, Eleanor pulled herself up. Her heart raced as she assessed the crowd. They had gathered again, some bloodied and bruised but still resolute. She took a breath, letting the strength of the villagers wash over her. Listen. She called loudly, forcing her voice to cut through the confusion. We need to check on each other, and then get more buckets. Can we do it? Yeah. A nearby villager shouted, their fists pumping in the air. Eleanor felt the love that radiated from everyone around her, grit and vulnerability combined. She had always cared for her community, but now, something deeper was igniting. A shadow lurked in her thoughts, a whisper of doubt about what lay ahead. Would they really be able to save the mill? As she grabbed another bucket and turned to the river once more, Aiden moved in beside her, a steady presence. That was close, huh? He said, offering a playful grin despite the chaos. It was, she chuckled nervously, feeling the tension begin to ease. But deep within her, a question lingered, like a shadow over her heart. Did Aiden feel the same crackling electricity between them that she did? And how would she have the courage to dive into that connection amidst such turmoil? Just then, a shout drew her attention. Eleanor! Look! She turned, heart sinking as she saw the water level rising dangerously high. The river had turned wild, thrashing against its banks and threatening to engulf the mill entirely. An overwhelming tide was coming, and it was not going to wait. Gather everyone, she shouted, urgency back in her voice. We need to work together to protect the mill. As they organized into action, Eleanor felt a rush of fear and hope. Would they withstand this storm, both the real one and the crumbling of what was to come? Suddenly, Aiden gripped her arm, eyes wide with determination. We can do this, Eleanor. Together. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor looked at him and felt a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. But the thought of what this all truly meant pressed heavily on her mind. Was she ready to embrace this new life, to face not just the physical storm but the emotional one brewing inside her? What if we fail? She whispered, barely able to voice the fear that had taken root since all of this started. We won, Aiden replied firmly. Not as long as we stand as one. As they braced for the wave of challenges ahead, Eleanor's heart thudded loud with determination. Yet still, one burning question lingered in her mind: what awaited them when the dust settled? Would they find the connections they truly sought, or would the chaos tear them apart? The sky darkened, heavy clouds hurling gray shadows across the village. Eleanor's heart raced, and her mind spun with nearly as much chaos as the rapidly rising waters. The villagers surged around her, their movements frantic yet focused, fueled by fear and necessity. She could see the urgency on their faces. Every person knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a building, it was part of their lives, their stories, their shared memories. More buckets. Eleanor called, her voice driving through the undercurrent of panic. She spotted Jane, a neighbor she had known since childhood, racing toward them carrying 3 empty buckets. Jane! You need to fill them faster. Without pause, Jane nodded and sprinted toward the river's edge, determination written all over her features. Eleanor could feel that same fire igniting in others around her. A collective sense of purpose began to form, in the face of destruction, a raw energy pushing everyone to act. Eleanor. Aiden's voice cut through the sound of rushing water. He pointed toward the brewing current. We need to block the path of the river. We can't let it reach the mill. Right. She pivoted, eyes following his pointing finger to an old pile of rocks that had been untouched for years. We need to create a barrier. Tension buzzed between them as they dashed toward the stones, their hands working instinctively joining the effort. Eleanor felt the connection with Aiden swell, and it pushed her forward. With each rock they stacked together, the foundations of doubt in her heart began to shift, replaced by a fierce determination. "If we can build this strong enough," she murmured, her heart matching the rhythm of their pounding hands. "Then we can hold back the water," Aiden finished, glancing at her with a spark of hope in his eyes. Exactly. The barrier rose higher as more villagers joined them. Eleanor caught glimpses of familiar faces, some grim, some radiant with purpose. Each face became a part of her resolve, a reminder that they were more than just individuals in a storm, they were a community bound together by love and history. "Eleanor." Someone called out, and she turned to see George, the village carpenter, rushing toward her. "I have some old boards from the workshop. They might help with the barrier." "Yes, yes," she shouted, excitement bubbling up in her chest. She waved him onward as he heaved the boards toward them. As they continued to build, the water surged ominously, swelling higher and higher, but Eleanor felt the pulse of unity among them. Each person's grit felt electric, it was as if they were all breathing life into the weathered earth around them. But just as they placed the last board into place, a deafening roar filled the air. The river had breached its banks, spilling over like a wild beast unleashed. Eleanor's heart sank as the water surged toward the mill, a furious wave of dark power. "Hold the line!" Aiden shouted, grabbing her wrist just as the torrent crashed against their makeshift barrier. The ground shook beneath them, and Eleanor could see fear mirrored in Aiden's eyes. The barrier held for a moment, but Eleanor could feel it weakening. "We need more people," she yelled, glancing around at the frenzied energy of the crowd. The water gushed, undermining their hard work. "Keep pushing," she called, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. "We can't let it take our home." As they strained against the power of nature, Eleanor felt the warmth of Aiden's hand in hers, an anchor in this tumultuous sea of emotion and chaos. Was this what it felt like to fight for someone beyond yourself? Just then, amidst the turmoil, she caught a glimpse of the mill behind them, its silhouette shadowed against the raging waters. The mill represented safety, history, a promise of hope. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she shook her head, pushing back her fear. They would not fail. Not now. Suddenly, a new realization cut through her fears like lightning. A wave of clarity washed over her. This moment, this fight, was not merely about saving the mill, it was forging connections. And building something lasting amid uncertainty. But then, another shout pierced the air. "Look out!" Eleanor's gaze snapped toward a new danger. A large wave was forming further upstream, moving quickly and with perilous intent. Would they have enough time to prepare for its arrival? "No, not now," she murmured, feeling dread settling back into her heart, mingling with her resolve. "Eleanor." Aiden's voice rang out, urgency making his words sharper. "We need you." Everything hinged on this moment. Could they hold? Could they protect not only the mill but each other? Would she have the courage to stand strong, even when the tide threatened to sweep everything away? The storm wasn't finished with them yet. What would happen when that wave finally crashed down? The air was thick with tension, a palpable electricity that whispered of frantic possibility and hovering disaster. Eleanor felt her pulse quicken as Aiden's grip tightened around her wrist. She glanced at the menacing wave swelling in the distance, its shadow stretching ominously over the village. "Eleanor, we need to brace ourselves." Aiden's voice shot through her fog of fear, sharpening her focus. She fought to keep her voice steady. "Everyone. Keep your eyes on the river. We have to hold together." The villagers began passing along more stones, more boards, while others formed a human chain, each person contributing whatever strength they had. Eleanor's eyes darted across their faces, fierce determination glowing in the depths of despair. The older folks, the children, families, they were all there, united against the swirling chaos. "On my mark." she shouted, raising her free hand. 3, 2, 1, hold. As the terrifying wave bore down, time seemed to stretch. Heart racing, she felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins, igniting a resilience she didn't know she possessed. The wave crashed against their barrier, sloshing violently against the stones and boards they'd piled. Water sprayed around them like icy needles, but they stood firm. It buffeted against Eleanor, trying to push her back, trying to rip away everything she was fighting for. Yet she anchored deeper into the earth, her breath steadying. Don't let up. Aiden's fierce call rumbled over the chaos. We can't let go. And then, it happened. A loud crack shattered through the clashing sounds of water and screams. Eleanor whipped around to see a section of their makeshift barrier giving way, the stone tumbling like loose marbles. Panic gripped her heart, and she roared, "We need to shore it up. Now!" With new urgency, they rushed over, Aiden by her side. Together, they scrambled to push stones back in place, the frigid water splashing up their legs, soaking their trousers and feet. They worked side by side, the warm rush of Aiden's body next to hers driving her forward. More rocks. Over here. George yelled, his voice filled with panic. Eleanor turned to see George blindly scrambling through the rubble, his arms straining. "I'll help," she shouted, breaking away for just a moment to grasp at the rocks he couldn't reach. But the moment she stepped away, another wave surged, crashing against their weakened barrier. Eleanor stumbled back, nearly losing her footing as the water licked at her heels. She turned just in time to see Aiden, his face a mask of concentrated fear, gritting his teeth and pushing hard against the flood. "Stay with me, Eleanor," he called, his eyes fierce and pleading. It sent a chill down her spine, the vulnerability woven in his words. This wasn't just about the mill. It was about them. About the lives at stake. About the community that might never truly recover if they lost this fight. But the ground shifted again, a powerful ripple racing through the barrier. The villagers drew back instinctively, terror pulling at their hearts. Aiden's gaze darted from Eleanor to the coming water, a decision alighting in his eyes. "Eleanor. We have to get everyone back. Now." Before she could protest, he grabbed her hand, urgency surging between them. They sprinted, shouting for everyone to back away from the crumbling barrier. The fear in her chest threatened to close her throat, but she pushed it down. The wave was rising faster now, a dark force that felt alive, more malevolent than before. "Back! Back!" Aiden shouted as he led her away, their feet splashing desperately through the thickening mud. In the chaotic dance of survival, Eleanor's gaze locked with Aiden's, and in that brief moment, she saw more than fear, she saw resolve, courage, and an ember of hope. They were all that mattered in this fleeting exchange, two people standing against the tide. But just as the first crash hit their legs, another shadow loomed larger behind the wave. What could possibly be worse than this watery wrath? Eleanor's heart raced as the storm's ferocity grew. Would they be able to save their village from this chaos? Or were they destined to be swept away in the surge? The wall of water crashed into their barrier with furious force, splintering wood and shattering stone. Eleanor felt the world shift beneath her, as panic gripped her heart. She stumbled but quickly regained her footing, the cold water splashing at her waist, soaking her to the bone. The soldiers behind the barrier struggled, panic rising in tandem with the flood. "Aiden!" she cried, reaching out for him as the tide rose. He was by her side in an instant, determination etched across his face. The ground quaked beneath them, threatening to buckle as the water surged. "Eleanor!" Aiden shouted above the roar, urgency sparking in his tone. "We need to lead everyone back. Clear the area." Nodding, she felt a surge of strength. Guided by adrenaline and newfound purpose, she rallied the villagers. "Follow us. Move back." She grabbed a few hands she recognized, pulling families and friends toward higher ground. She felt Aiden's strong grip on her arm, and together they surged through the rising chaos, her heart racing with each step. "Keep going. We can't stop," she shouted, her voice unwavering. The villagers looked to her, eyes wide, watching her lead amidst the fury of nature. But just as they reached a safer distance, she heard another deafening crash behind them. Eleanor turned, her breath catching in her throat as the barrier collapsed entirely. A new wave surged forward, breaking free like an angry beast, swallowing the last remnants of their defense. "Eleanor." Aiden's voice broke through the panic, grounding her once more. "This way." He pulled her away from the flood, guiding her toward the edge of the village square. They reached safety moments before the water swept through, engulfing the mill in a torrent of destruction. The oppressive roar of nature faded into stunned silence, leaving a heavy blanket of disbelief hanging in the air. Eleanor gasped, heart pounding as she processed the devastation. The mill, their heritage, their lifeblood, was now a shadow, a ruin reminding them of their shared histories, torn apart by nature's fury. But among the wreckage, she could see the faces of her neighbors. Fear and despair mingled in their features, yet there was something else: the spark of resilience, the flicker of determination. "We have to help clear the debris," Eleanor shouted, rallying the villagers again. "This isn't over. We'll rebuild together." To her surprise, a collective shout rang out. "Yes. Let us do it. Together." It resonated like a chant, a harmonic echo of unity and renewed purpose. The fear began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of duty and shared responsibility. Aiden's eyes met Eleanor's, an unspoken bond flickering between them. "Together," he murmured, a gentle promise laced in his voice. With renewed energy, they all surged toward the wreckage. Eleanor found herself at the forefront, working side by side with Ruth, George, and others to clear the remnants of their former lives. Each stone removed felt like shedding an old skin, weight falling away as new strength blossomed. She wasn't just the spinster anymore. In that moment, she was a leader, a member of the heart of this community. Hours blurred into one another as they labored, lifting and clearing, hands coming together like a well-oiled machine. Laughter punctuated their work, a deep sense of bonding enveloping them. Aiden worked next to her, and their hands brushed against each other continuously. She felt something blooming between them, a shared warmth igniting a new spark. The sun began to set, casting orange and pink hues against the sky, painting a soft glow amidst the aftermath of chaos. Exhaustion weighed heavy on her body, but joy danced in her heart. They had faced the storm, come together through fear, and transformed it into something stronger. "Eleanor," Aiden whispered as he stepped closer, a soft smile on his lips that dazzled under the fading light. "You were incredible today." Her cheeks flushed. "I couldn't have done it without you." The sincerity in his gaze made her pulse quicken. This was at the moment she had longed for, where their hearts could finally speak what they both felt. Gone were the fears of gossip, obligation, and duty. Instead, she was surrounded by love that urged her to be brave. "Not just me," he said gently, brushing a damp strand of hair behind her ear. "Us. Together." "Yes," she breathed, their intertwined fate sparking bright within her. "Together." She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle, and there was no more doubt now, no more fear of judgment. Her heart was beating for love, for this connection, for a future she dared to dream now. As the stars began to pop against the velvet sky, Eleanor knew this was just the beginning. She could feel it deep within her, an indefatigable sense of hope threaded with love, binding them all together despite the storm that once raged. And in that space, beneath the expansive night sky, Eleanor understood, she had chosen love, chosen her connection, chosen to embrace life. "Tomorrow, we'll rebuild," she said, her smile radiant and sure. "Together," Aiden echoed, mirroring her joy, his hand slipping through hers, fueling her heart with courage. Together. This was not just about the mill but about every piece of their lives woven into this moment. A new chapter awaited them, and all fear had washed away, leaving only the promise of dawn. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and help us keep sharing these powerful tales. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share and show your true support.